Hi friends, welcome to Gallant IAS HEPGEC program for daily revision. Here we are going to revise UPSC previous year questions and do some more questions also. So let's get started. First topic is history. The arrival of Babur into India led to the introduction of gunpowder in the subcontinent, introduction of arch and dome in the region's architecture, establishment of Timurid dynasty in the region. So, introduction of gunpowder was there much before the arrival of Babur. In the 14th and 15th century, this gunpowder was introduced for various military purposes and wars. And even rudimentary forms of artillery were also there much before Babur came to India. So, our first statement is actually wrong. So, if first statement is wrong, you could easily eliminate options A, option C and option D. So, you will get the answer as option B just by knowing the first statement is wrong. Anyway, let's move on to the other two statements. Statement 2 is introduction of the arch and dome in the region's architecture. Actually, it was not with the beginning of Mughal Empire that arches and domes were introduced in the subcontinent. Actually, this was much before that. Is this introduction of arches and domes was done by the Delhi Sultanate because they were instrumental in bringing about the Islamic architecture into our country. So, arches and domes are very peculiar features of Islamic architecture and it was introduced by the much before empire, that is Delhi Sultanate. So, statement 2 is also wrong. Establishment of Timurid dynasty in the region. Actually, Timurid dynasty is a Sunni Muslim dynasty and it is cited that there have been two major empires for this Timurid dynasty, and one is the Timurid Empire, which was in Persian and Central Asian regions, and the second is the Mughal Empire, which was there in the Indian subcontinent. So, the third statement is right. So, our answer will be option B, 3 only. Let's move on to the second question from economy. Which of the following can aid in furthering the government's objective of inclusive growth? So, inclusive growth is actually aimed at bringing the benefit of growth of our country to all the sections of the society, mainly to the downtrodden and the disadvantaged sections. So, here three statements are given and among these three, which can be the objectives of inclusive growth. First is promoting self-help groups. Yes, by promoting self-help groups, the socio and economic empowerment is made. So, first statement is right. Promoting micro, small and medium enterprises. The MSME sector, strengthening the MSME sector actually empowers for social and economic development. So, second statement is also right. Third statement is implementing the Right to Education Act. The RTE Act, which provides for free and compulsory education, is also an objective of inclusive growth. So, here the answer will be option D, 1, 2 and 3. You can also apply elimination method here. If you know first statement is there, then you could eliminate option C, and if 2 is there, and then you could eliminate option A, and then you could arrive at the answer with reading the third statement also. Okay, now let's move on to the third question from polity. Consider the following statements in respect of financial emergency under Article 360 of the Constitution of India. A proclamation of financial emergency issued shall cease to operate at the expiration of 2 months unless before the expiration of that period it has been approved by the resolutions of both the houses of the parliament. Okay, so the first statement regarding financial emergency, which is listed in Article 360 of our Constitution, accordingly, it says that regarding a proclamation of financial emergency has to be approved by both the houses of the parliament within a 2-month period. Beyond 2-month period, the proclamation of financial emergency it stands to be ceased. So, our first statement is actually a right statement. Moving to the second statement. If any proclamation of financial emergency is in operation, it is competent for the President of India to issue directions for the reduction of salaries and allowances of all or any class of persons serving in connection with the affairs of the Union, but excluding the judges of Supreme Court and High Courts. The statement is correct for its approximately for its 3/4 of its part, but when dealing with the affairs of Union, but excluding the judges of Supreme Court and High Courts. The last part is what making that statement wrong. Actually, if President desires that the salaries and allowances of judges of Supreme Court and High Court has to be also reduced during financial emergency, then it can be so. So, the statement 2 regarding exclusion of judges and Supreme Court, judges of Supreme Court and High Courts from the reduction of salaries during financial emergency is actually a wrong statement. So, statement 2 is wrong. So, here our answer will be option A, 1 only. Okay, moving on to fourth question from geography. The annual range of temperature in the interior of continents is high as compared to coastal areas. What is or are the reason or reasons? Okay, the first statement is thermal difference between land and water. Second statement, variation in altitude between continents and oceans. The third statement, presence of strong winds in the interior. Fourth statement, heavy rains in the interior as compared to coast. So here, while we are discussing about the temperature variation in Earth. So, the major factor for temperature variation is actually the distribution of land and ocean in the Earth's surface. As you can see, the northern hemisphere is having more land when compared to the southern hemisphere. And the specific heat capacity of water is more when compared with land. So that the land gets heated up very fast, at the same time it gives up heat at a very faster rate than oceans. So that's the reason why oceans are having moderate temperature or moderate conditions and land extreme conditions. Extreme conditions. So, here our question is, the annual range of temperature in interior of continents is high as compared to coastal areas. So, what is or are the reasons? So, thermal difference between land and water is which accounts for this difference, variation in the annual range of temperature between coastal areas and the interior continents. There is another two concept which is known as the maritime influence and the continental influence. The maritime influence is actually the influence of, that is the moderating influence of oceans on the temperature of land is in the coastal areas, that is known as the maritime influence, and continental influence is actually the increasing temperature to the interior of the continents. It is known as the continental influence. So, that's it about the geography part. Moving to environment. What is Rio Plus 20 conference often mentioned in the news? Option A, it is the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. It is a ministerial meeting of the World Trade Organization. It's a conference of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's a conference of the member countries of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So, Rio Plus 20 conference, actually back in 1992, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development was held in Rio de Janeiro, and this was known as Earth Summit or Rio Summit. And after 20 years, in 2012, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development was held in the same spot in Rio, and that's why this is known as Rio plus 20. So here the answer is, it is United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. It was again held in Rio de Janeiro itself in 2012. Okay, next, current affairs. Hori Habba festival is celebrated in which of the following states? A. Punjab, B. Karnataka, C. Tamil Nadu, and D. Rajasthan. So, Hori Habba festival is actually, it is also known as Hathi Habba festival, and it is a popular bull catching festival which is practiced in Karnataka. Actually, northern parts of Karnataka, in lines with the Kambala festival which is practiced in the southern parts of Karnataka. And it is practiced mainly in the harvest seasons. And this was mainly in news because one of the districts in northern parts of Karnataka where this has been practicing, the district administration came up with ban on this festival, citing some major safety concerns. So that's why this festival came recently in news. So that is Hathi Habba festival. It is practiced in Karnataka. So our answer is option B, Karnataka. So that's all for today. Thank you.